HMO Sobbies, it's the trickster. Welcome to another edition of 30 with Tony. As you know, we got the best news, the bossest music, and the most amazing classic clips. Today's subject is by Golly. He really is corrupt, and we will be chronicling the reign of Governor King Ned Lamont the unaccountable. And let me tell you, I am an expert in scandals. Anyway, you know I am the coolest president of all time, and I love you, so let's hit HMO Sobbies and give it to me.
Time, I want you to give it to me, lay it on me, sock it to me, whip it on me, give it to me, baby, give it to me, baby, come on, give it to me, baby, again and again and again and again, yeah, hey, hey, hey. Just can't refuse. You got to give it to me, lay it on me, sock it to me, whip it on me, give it to me, baby. Oh yeah, give it to me, baby. Come on now, give it to me, baby. Again and again and again and again. Come on now, give it to me, baby.
Well, hi, Kemosabi's. It's Tony D'Angelo. It is March 13th, 2025, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. You're here for another edition of 30 with Tony. So happy to have you. So happy to welcome all our new viewers coming in from basically all over the country, some all over the world. Welcome, welcome. I welcome you here. And I am so ever so touched and ever so grateful. And this is an interesting subject for me. It's not a new subject, but the title of this subject, as the promo said, was Get Over It. He Really Is Corrupt. And we're going to be talking about the governor of Connecticut, Governor Ned Lamont, as I like to refer him, as others like to refer him on X Twitter as King Governor Ned Lamont, the unaccountable, or King Ned. He received the King Ned sobriquet from my show host and friend Lee Elsey when he kept locking down people in the era of COVID-19 when he didn't have to, because he was doing two things at that point. He was milking the federal government for as much cash as he could get out of them and get out of Joe Biden. And also because he could keep his little schemes, not little schemes, but big schemes going and going and going. And we're going to look at this myriad, complex layer of corruption that is mind-boggling this afternoon. But be that as it may, chatting with a couple of people, and yesterday I was trying to do 9 different things at the same time. Was chatting with a friend and a lady, and she had remarked to me that when does this corruption tree start to effectively rot from the roots up? And I have the belief now that a lot of things are swirling, a lot of things are taking place. So I think it's going to happen in due course, but yet in near due course. But the other thing is the legitimate media and the political system never get to the root of things. Now, God bless Lee Elsey, who gave me a voice to actually dig into it and to share this with many people, because we wouldn't know as much as we do unless we had this, shall I say, this cross-pollination of many people knowing, many more people knowing that something is terribly amiss, and then sharing the information with others and conversing and, sharing research and that kind of thing. So I had remarked to my lady friend that this really is complex, high-level stuff. I mean, it's beyond comprehension. Perhaps that's part of the reason why the legitimate media and the legitimate political establishment doesn't grasp it, because they don't understand it. I don't know about that. I think it's avoided. But one other male friend came to me and said, I know from looking at it, it's terrible, it's wretched, it reeks, it's corrupt, but it's so hard to understand that many times I can't keep up with it, or he can't keep up with me. And I decided I was kicking around for subjects, and a lot of interesting things you could talk about, a lot of interesting things taking place. I never want to bring you something that's being well covered or well known elsewhere. I mean, I can give you something that's on this afternoon's news, and that's like, hey, you want some soup? And I reach in the cupboard for a can of Campbell's. I don't want to do that to you. I want to give you something that, at least to my knowledge, no one else is giving you. And not because it's me, but because I think you need, and I think we all need, a broad spectrum of information. Again, everything else going on in the world is not valueless. It's valuable. Some of it is valueless. And if I'm doing my job here correctly, I am making you a much more discerning consumer of the news fare, if you will. If I'm doing that right, if I'm doing it wrong, well, I deserve what I get. But basically, it's, get over it. He really is corrupt. And it's just, when I was talking to my lady friend, I listed everything that I just said to her out. And I said, my Lord, this is incredibly awful, wretched, beyond belief. And coupled with the fact, and we'll get into that a little bit, today, that it is this blinders act from state Republicans and a total blinders act from state media. Now, of course, that is because of the fact of how the money flows. The stories that we see are the stories that they want for us to see, because money is being generated for that particular purpose. They don't want you to see me. They don't want you to pay attention to, what I'm going to be showing you. It does not facilitate their interests. And besides, they don't care about you at all in the least. They care about you only to the extent that you will be useful to them in facilitating their purpose. That's all there is. They're not the least bit concerned about you. You don't matter to them. But that's really what's taking place here. So why don't we just get started? Because this is really a complex subject. Today, I'm going to break it down into component parts. And at the end, you're going to say, yeah, it's time to get over it. He really is corrupt. So let's get to it. I tried to approach this thing from 9 different ways. And finally, I decided this is how I was going to do it. Okay. If you have not read the Swick Speak of March 8th, 2025, I am assigning it to you as homework. You need to get the gist of what's happening here. And we talked about this this past Tuesday on the Lee Elsey show. I am a bank trust guy. I am a control guy. Many people will call me a control freak, and I look at them and I say it louder. You can't control things enough. But when it comes to the government in the state of Connecticut, a large part of how Ned Lamont was able to do what he's able to do is because of the lack of any kind of control in the government whatsoever. But when you come to the state government, it's a sewer, it's a mishmash, it's a mess, because not only do you have, largely a bird brain legislature who does not understand the concepts of control and governance in the least. Nobody understands it. You would expect a little bit more from Republicans. They don't get it. They never say it. They never, I've never had one come to me and say, gee, that's a good concept, Tony. How do you think we can do this better? Well, I mean, I share that. But I mean, basically, it's nobody really understands it, because basically Connecticut government, and Bob Swick goes through it terrifically, is number one, it is a fantasy of media wise, but the way to quote unquote avoid being an oppressed citizen, as Bob says, join the government. Better still, join the legislature. You can live in a dream world. Write bills for money that's not coming, that people can't pay for. If Doge cuts off the water, are you going to ask me to double my property taxes or double my income taxes? I guess, because these people are so delusional, they think I can afford it. Guess what? I cannot. Neither can you. But when this all comes down to it, the governance in Connecticut putting money through incredible amounts of nonprofits. 24,000, I actually got a little bit too much blue there. 24,195 active tax exempt outfits of 2025. Now, that's not all, quote unquote, feeding into the, or being fed by Connecticut. There's, charitable trusts, there's family foundations, and all kinds of things like that. But basically, the staggering thing is between 2019 and 2023, the analysis shows 1,500 to 2,500 unique nonprofits consume state funds. Now that's 2,500 or 1,500. Let's cut it down the middle, 2,000 loose cannons. That is, that's another potential Sirac in Norwich. That is a fat mouth legislator getting money for somebody, throwing it into a nonprofit, creating a non-job for somebody, and going back again to do it year after year after year, and then it becomes a begging tree. We don't know how many drug addiction charities we need, drug rehabilitation charities we need. We got a whole bunch of them. We don't know how many domestic violence charities we need, but we got a whole bunch of them. And all that really tells you is the more money goes into these things and the more things get involved, things get worse. And then you got to ask yourself something. Number one, are the problems in this state facilitated by no economy, bad industry, too much leisure time, when your biggest industries are, pizza and basketball and things like that? I got nothing against pizza. I got nothing against basketball, but, we're not exactly splitting any atoms over here. And, some government construction. It's like, is this quote unquote creating for the working person a Detroit mindset? Back when you had the big three in Detroit, when my brother was high up in the automobile industry, Detroit was drunk, stone cold graveyard drunk from Friday night at 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock on Monday morning. Why was that? Because there's not a whole lot you could do in Detroit over the weekend when it gets to 20 below zero, except watch television, maybe watch a sporting event, and drink. That's basically it. So is it that our, whatever you want to call it, our vision is so visionless? This is what's going on. Oh yeah, we got a great marijuana business. We talked about that last week, and it's being run into the ground by the illegal operators who are infinitely smarter than the state. Not a stretch, but that being as it is, Is that what's taking place? That we're just the working areas are so brain dead, or we're just totally bereft? A third of this freaking state is on Medicaid. A third of this state is not even on barely get along street, but we're turned the corner and we're right on Grumble Alley. Now, we've got the wealthiest state and we've got a third of the state that's poor. What does that tell you? That tells you this is the most horribly run, horribly mismanaged, horribly out of control mess that we've got. So, you're King Governor Ned Lamont, the unaccountable. You're Matt Ritter, right? Matt Ritter, who sees things through his own prism, and he's trying to get more funding into nonprofits. Why? Because it's more potential business for him and his cronies. Somebody goes and sues a nonprofit for some perceived personnel violation, and he's there like an ambulance chaser. So basically, there's all kinds of permutations and possibilities like that. And this is what they want to see. But what that does is that it takes your tax dollars and just throws them into an abyss. And no one's asking the question. Not one, I'm not going to swear, legislator is saying, hey, let's chart these things. How many are there? How many redundancies? How many do we need? We're going to be getting less money. You understand that? Whether we like that or not, we're going to be getting less federal money. So if we want to deliver needful services that we need, I'm not saying that we don't need alcohol rehab. I'm not saying that we don't need domestic violence rehab or, other human services. But if you want to continue to do this, you're going to have to figure out a way to do it at a much more efficient level. Sean Scanlon, our technically inept controller, was out last week talking, begging for more Medicaid money. It's all he knows how to do. I mean, Sean Scanlon would not have the slightest clue of listing out 15 things on a computer spreadsheet and figuring, okay, how do I deliver 200 horsepower with 100 horses? See, we in the private sector have to do this continually. We have to figure out how to do things. What government doesn't have to do that. Government will just raise taxes or sit there and cry the poor mouth or, all kinds of things like that and deal and shame. And, then they want to go over it because you got to provide for waste, fraud, and abuse, of course. That's how they compensate their cronies. But basically, this is where you need to be reading this particular article. It's the looseness in the garbage in Connecticut that causes or shall I say, gives fertile ground to the frauds, the myriad frauds that go on all the time. Bob Swick makes a great reference here. The Scholar Strategy Network tied to UConn and the director, Paola Maynard Mall, making actually close to $200,000. Now, think about what this means to the cost of your grocery bill, people. Objectivity and scientific message that analyze the effects of policies or interventions. Training allows them to synthesize knowledge across studies, determine policy effects, interpret nuance, and understand implementation challenges. I mean, and they also do a help others to vote gig. That's neat, right? Like Planned Parenthood and all these other things are supposed to be non-voting. You can't influence legislation as a calling card, if you will. You're supposed to lose your exemption, but that's what they do. And Bob says it perfectly. Does any legislator, I'm going to highlight that, ever question the propriety, redundancy, and usefulness of these myriad nonprofit cash cows? Why? That's your chance to get in the paper, stick your fat mouth with, somebody's arm, with your arm around somebody. I'm not demeaning the fact that there shouldn't be assistance. I am demeaning the fact that this is all redundancy for self-aggrandizement purposes. Now, you can read on your own in the interest of time last week's Senate Bill 1453, which is all about the pet causes of the Connecticut Democrat Party. 45.3% to LGBTQ, Planned Parenthood, sanctuary states, and Iris. And it's, hey, let's carpetbag. That's just the way it's been. You want to know where, why, and how we're at. It's because there's years and years and years of this. It's almost like the Republicans and the Democrats were two brothers who were thrown out of their house by respective spouses. And one is like a 3-beer guy, the other guy's like a 30-beer guy, or maybe a 5-beer guy and a 30-beer guy. And the one who's got a little bit of sense is trying to tell the other one somewhat, hazily and buzzedly that, he's on the wrong track and the other one's not listening to him. Nobody's like saying, we got to get away from liquor because liquor is killing us. They never did it. And that's the thing. It's like, you cannot be part pregnant, and there's no such thing as a little cancer. And that's what it's been. But anyway, what caught my eye and where I started to come down this path is Kevin Rennie's article in the Sunday Hartford Courant last, I guess that would have been last Sunday. I guess he wrote it on the 8th. It was published on the 9th. And he's talking about the answers Connecticut officials won't give about a grand jury. And I read this, and it's not for its, how could I put it, for its purpose, not a half bad article, but the legitimate media will never, ever, ever get down and get dirty as to what's really happening in the corruption world of Ned Lamont. Now, Mr. Rennie makes the reference that Governor Lamont returned from a trade mission to India. Like there was a responsible and, shall we say, legitimate and positive trade mission in India. That's why he was there. We're going to look at that in a moment. But he talks about the Constantinos Diamantis scandal and the indictment to Mr. Diamantis on extortion and false statement charges, and that's not really the subject as such of my discussion. But basically, it's always like the establishment reports on the corruption of Ned between the lines. And it's always that they will, and this kind of comes and goes and comes and goes and comes and goes, never, ever, ever really getting to the roots of what's happening. Never, ever, ever, ever getting to, in other words, they're dealing with the symptoms. Diamantis, this whole thing is a symptom of all the corruption in Connecticut for years and years and years. But yet I like to call this stuff ham and egg corruption. It's the type that, people can get without really paying a whole lot of attention to it. It's the type that doesn't do damage to an entire political class, if you will, and an entire media, where really I take the position that the entire political class and quote unquote a lot of the Connecticut legitimate media really do need to be damaged and started over or starved out or whatever for all the stuff they've done to the citizens of Connecticut. But they never, ever, ever get to the roots of this. So when I look at Kevin Rennie, he's talking about Diamantis. Yes, read it. There is some good information in it, but he legitimizes Lamont on a trade mission to India. Like, okay, there's nothing there, folks. There's no there. He'll talk about Deidre Gifford of the health department, Diamantis, the other guy who was involved with him. Okay. That to me is a tip of the iceberg or the cherry on the sundae. So all they want to give you is the cherry because they want the ice cream for themselves, basically. But let's look. I'm going to stop the share here for a second. Ned Lamont took office in the beginning of 2019, kind of non-committal. Nobody really knew. I mean, they knew of him. They knew of him. He had run for the Senate. I think, if I recall, actually, he ran for the Senate. I guess it was about 2006, 2007. He had puttered around. He seemed to be a fresh face at the time. And, I actually had several conversations with him at the Greater New Haven Chamber. I really didn't know him. He really didn't know me, but I did not find the man offensive or threatening or anything like that. But he really was, in some ways, kind of an ingenue. And as time went on, he began to show himself as, even though he came out as, I'm this humble guy, I'm going to be driving this van, and life is going to be normal, and I'm a really rational, level-headed person who has your interest in heart. And we all kind of watched that and saw a couple of things, and and, but there wasn't really anything that gripped us, at least not gripped me for one way or the other. He has and had a marvelous way of staying out of trouble because he pays for cover, basically. He has his people, he is in India during the time when Doge is hot, during the time when the corruption scandals heat up, and during the time when people would question him about things. And he finds a way to go and a way to get there and a way not to answer the questions. For years, he has ducked the illegal immigration sanctuary state questions. He's ducked them. He's entirely ducked them. His state-run media buddies have not pressed him on it. But that's basically it. And it's like, okay, well, I'm thinking, I'm working, and it's like, well, if I can get along and you do not interfere with my life, I'm not that trouble with it. However, trouble came. And what happened? Let's get to that. Now, when COVID-19 came, there was a lot of, in the most mismanaged, horrific, duplicitous, horrific charade of government fiscal, health, and business policy. A lot of mistakes made all over the place, which really were good faith mistakes on the part of, Donald Trump when he was president and the people around him. And then really dirty stuff was happening with the Democrat governors, of Ned Lamont being one. Ned became ugly. And he became very protective of his turf and very controlling, and instituted the same quote unquote executive powers and public health emergencies that his big brother Andrew Cuomo is doing, and some of the others. And it was like, well, is he really being sincere? Is he really being honest and truthful? Is this something that we should pay attention to, or is this a sham and a fraud? Well, we found out to a large extent as we went into this. This was a continuing sham and fraud, but it's kind of like, we didn't know whether to trust him or not, so we trusted. But those of us that were paying attention to this verified, and when we started to verify, we found out that there was a lot of stuff that really wasn't verifiable. Now, when this is going on, here's, Ned looking cool at night, talking to Neil Cavuto, and, being propped up perfectly by Media Storm and McKinsey as to, quote unquote, this man that has this virus, and he's, doing a great job in COVID. I mean, Kevin Rennie still says that. I mean, it's like, you've either got to be a defender, Mr. Rennie, on the take, or ignorant beyond belief to say that with what's happened. I mean, basically, it's a part of me says, how could you? A part of me says, you're on the Connecticut food chain. I understand, because that's the game you play. But that all being as it is, there was a time when the unaccountable came out, King Governor Ned Lamont, the unaccountable, and he said, guess what? This is going to kill us all, so I got to keep a thumb on you. A 6-week-old baby tested positive for coronavirus. And he makes a statement, and there's his tweet. It is with heartbreaking sadness that we can confirm the first pediatric fatality in Connecticut. And a 6-week-old newborn from the Hartford area was brought to the hospital and died of COVID. Now, I'm curious if I hunch on that. Yeah, it's still out there. He never took it down. But basically, I just want to go back to where I was. He makes this statement and goes and says, this is what's happening. And we found out later, with knowledge of forethought, he made this statement. In other words, he misrepresented this infant's death. The infant turned out, dying of SIDS, and didn't tell us. Now, at that point, I was screaming for this man's removal. How can you have a chief executive that basically lies? I mean, how do I know anything else he's telling me is true? Do you think there was any one person in the Connecticut legislature that took me on? Do you think Pat Boyden Pomfret, when I emailed him and I said, you need to call for this man's removal, didn't do a thing? The other guy, Champagne, who was the state senator, I said, you're a police officer, man. I mean, you tolerate this? You must be a lousy cop. And I mean, basically, Lenny Fasano, forget about it. It's like, so what? It's like, hey, listen, somebody lies to you on something that's that critical. You've got to pay attention to everything else that they're doing, because it's like, I keep saying this, it's like a rust spot in your boat in your car. It's not that little spot. It's everything that's under it, and it amazes me when I watch these guys come and, drag in these rusted wrecks, and they want to make beautiful antique cars out of them. I say, how could you? You got no frame. You got no this. It's like, oh, we can do it. Well, God bless them if they could. All I'm seeing is rust. That's basically it. But anyway, that's what was going on, really. So from that point forward, I started to have big questions as to what the unaccountable was doing. Now, there was a lovely young lady on Facebook. Her name was Victoria Eloise. And actually, I think that was her first name. But basically, she started to chronicle what she thought were funny movements of money. And this is the whole thing. Money moves the way it's intended to. The movement of money will indicate the true intent. For example, if I am a rotten husband and my wife gives me, $30 a week allowance, I can't be trusted with anything else, and she expects me to use that for, buying my necessities, or maybe going to McDonald's. That's probably one trip to McDonald's these days, or whatever amount of money. And I tell her that this is what I'm doing. And one day she comes home and she smells liquor on my breath. She knows I've been drinking the money away. So whatever I'm telling her about, hey, honey, I had a great Big Mac today, none of that's happening. I'm going out and, drinking my lunch. And it's like, well, there was a question that Victoria raised, and this is actually going back now 5 years. She was tracking the payments on the state checkbook from Human Services, and she was watching dates. And what she noted was that between July 1st and August 1st of 2019, Connecticut spent $781 million in federal aid to the Department of Social Services. And then a couple of days later, Ann Lamont, spouse of Governor Ned Lamont, allegedly moved, or she thought moved, $784 million to the fund in the Cayman Islands. Now, there is no, and Victoria admits that. So, but she says, this looks kind of funny to me. The numbers are close, so the amounts and things that, it's like, it's kind of like waddling like a duck. Now, one thing is very clear. Two things are clear. The Human Services did collect that much money, and the funding did go to a very large Cayman Islands limited partnership, if you will. Now, I talk about the Cayman Islands, and we didn't know what the Cayman Islands were until Ned became governor. And basically, the Cayman Islands are a tax and secrecy haven. And people hiding money, criminals hiding money, people not wanting to pay taxes will use all kinds of little limited partnerships, blockers, spitters, backdoors, you name it, to let money germinate in the Cayman Islands so they can grow their empires tax-free and not pay taxes like you and I do. And it's like, well, my first thought in my pea brain was, and you can look up these documents here. They are on the SEC website. I've also posted them in the past. Yes, there is the Cayman Islands. The incurious and brain dead Connecticut media never, ever, ever, ever asked that question. Why is the funding going to a Cayman Islands? You know, you're the governor of the state, Mr. Unaccountable. Shouldn't you be investing something here for the benefit of us all? I don't think when you bought your groceries last Thursday, you realized the value that the Cayman Islands give you when you buy your overpriced groceries. And if not for them, your groceries would be a whole lot more expensive. It has nothing to do with you, has absolutely, other than, possibly taking your money. Now, to be clear, there's no proof, direct proof, that this money went to that fund, but it looks weird. It looks entirely weird. And take it away from that. Why the Cayman Islands? Why are these people involved in this? What's happening? How does it go? Now, people have come to me and said that they are firmly convinced that the COVID-19 relief money ended up in the Cayman Islands. I cannot make that connection in and of myself because, basically the Cayman Islands is a secret brick wall. But what I can do is I can say, well, Semaphore did transact business and the funds were operating in the Cayman Islands. So, that is a direct no-brainer correlation. So basically your state governor is operating a self-deal business like Semaphore with the revenues going into the Cayman Islands, which is a tax haven. If you go to the Mr. Rennies of the world, actually the Mr. Rennies are over here. He thinks that the governor is on a trade mission to India and we should respect the legitimacy of that. But anyway, here's an article, $800 million and Oak is doing what they need to do, and. Now, it defies any sort of credulity assumption whatsoever to think that they weren't running all the business out of here. Why wouldn't they be running it out of the Cayman Islands when it's all there, basically? It's like you can have a management office here, but basically you're running it there. And my second thought was, my practitioner pea brain was like, well, if the unaccountable is benefiting from not tax exempt income, but tax secrecy income in the Cayman Islands, he's avoiding the payment of Connecticut income taxes and he's the governor. Well, I think he deals with that by filing these separate tax returns because he knows the soup his wife is involved in. And basically, because there's no reason for him there would be no reason. He gets no advantage for doing that other than the fact that if she gets picked up, maybe he wouldn't, at least on that charge. But that all being as it is, then as COVID raged on, I found out one June day that Semaphore, a Anne Lamont Partnership Equity, was selling COVID tests to the state of Connecticut. Now, you see the connection here. You see the correlation. Semaphore sells the tests paid with tax money, federal money, and the receipts are banked here. Now, our stupid, inane, inept, idiotic legislature and media was told this, was given tapes of this, and didn't do anything. Republican Party didn't do a blessed thing. In fact, at one point, the Hartford Courant ran an article that legislators are walking around the legislative building without masks. I'm saying without masks. They're taking money and sending it to the Cayman Islands, and it's your money, and they're profiting, and you don't say a damn word. This is how idiotic this whole legitimate system is, whether it's bought off or just stupid. I don't know in that case. But basically, this, I mean, I can spend the whole show on semaphore. I mean, I can give you 20 more slides today. And it's beyond belief. It is absolutely positively beyond belief that no Republican, Stefanowski flirted with it, but no Republican started to drill at these questions and drill at the Lamont corruption and drill at the abuse of taxpayer dollars. I am a taxpayer in this state. I have to be by the book. I've got to be by the book by my clients, but this is going on. This is the governor. This is the governor. $45 million of state money goes into an equity of which his wife is the prime mover of what, or the proponent or the fund manager or whatever. And this whole thing of this whole idiotic mess of we never made any money. Well, you know, it was like 66 million plus on IPO day, basically. But let's just say they didn't make any money. They still took state money and they still had a profit motive in bilking you to fatten their wallets. I mean, were these good COVID tests? Were they accurate? Did they do what they need to do? Or were they about as reliable as a Charms popsicle? We don't know. We've never seen an evaluation of that. Like the Connecticut Department of Health, the integrity bastion, Dr. Manisha Jutani, will tell you about that. I mean, you know, Ward, he will appoint the people that will cover for him. And she's a perfect example. You know, she ought to have Connecticut tattooed on her forehead. She's perfect. But that being as it is, this is what happened. That alone should have gotten him removed. I mean, there comes a point where you just have to say enough is enough is enough. How ridiculous does ridiculous have to be? I follow with interest. I don't have a daughter. Thank God I don't have a daughter playing sports, but this whole thing about males and girls sports. Yes, they are males. They came from the factory with certain equipment. And this whole thing of, well, this is okay. This is perfectly. I mean, it's like, I'm tired of delusion. I am tired of stupidity. I am tired of rot and ruin being the norm. I'm not accepting that anymore. I'm not accepting these stupid justifications with no meaning. And as far as a stupid justification with no meaning, $45 million comes out of the state treasury into a business that is owned by the governor's spouse. And whether you made a dime or whether you lost your shirt, that alone should qualify you for the orange pajamas. But anyway, a lot of funny stuff went on. And one thing that doesn't get a lot of play, and I don't know why. I mean, I've done my best with it. Then maybe I realize I'm at fault because this is something I have to maybe do visually. Watch the dollars, watch the timing. Look at here. Now, again, did that money here go into here? We don't know. But we do know that a very large Cayman Island fund was set up a few days later after that month of funding. And when that all came about, there was something else. And this is something that you hear so very little of. The Connecticut Hospital Association, which is another one of these, whatever you want to call it, can't get at them nonprofits. There is no freedom of information disclosure available to you. The legislature saw to that. But look at the date here. August 3rd, Annie Lamont set up her fund. August 6th, They set up something in the hospital association called Unite Us to launch statewide network to address patients' social need. Now, that's a curious name, Unite Us. Unite Us is an Oak HCFT equity. Why didn't they name it the Connecticut Social Network? Why didn't they name it Aid for the Needy and Poor? No, they named it Unite Us. And there was a reason for that, because this way, as we've pointed out before and on the Lee Elsey show and in several other places, they could use this receptacle, if you will, to throw a little revenue, throw a little shade to one of Annie Lamont's investments. And I've shown you the slide before where Unite Us has received $150,000 from the Connecticut Hospital Association. And you can look that up on Twitter. But basically, we have this collaboration. We have this wonderful thing. You see, people say things about Ned and they call him a Hitler and all this other stuff. I think that is an inept characterization. He is a racketeer. He is a mobster. And when things get hot, he goes on the lam. He's a racketeer. And this is a perfect example of racketeering. You set up, quote unquote, a place for, one of your feeders to feed, and you keep it away from public view, and you have a little press release and say, gee, aren't I wonderful? What went on in Unite Us? What did this whole thing, more or less kind of provide shade to? Remember the Unite CT Eviction and Prevention Fund? That's really kind of curious, right? Where they come up with these names. I mean, why wasn't it just called the Connecticut Eviction Prevention Fund? I mean, you've got the Unite CT Eviction Prevention Fund. Actually, I can do a little better job underlining. And then you've got Unite Us. And it's so basically, when the federal money came into this thing, the software, which was really kind of, my view, totally unnecessary software. You could have run this thing on a spreadsheet with a bookkeeper, and all the bottom feeders of the accounting firms and the law firms that were involved that consumed a great deal of this fund. It allowed the software to run more or less without any disclosure whatsoever. And I was screaming and yelling. I was coming on the Lee Elsey show. Here's Senator Tony Wong, who's over there posing with these people saying, oh, this is a really good thing. We have to help these people. I'm like, idiot. Don't you see there's like duplicitous stuff going on here? Guess not. But anyway, that being as it is, it's like, well, if we didn't have this being a, whatever you want to call it, a finger in your eye, I'm corrupt and I don't care what you think of me, we have this leading to this. And you can look up the financial records of this. It's a joke. And they basically took federal money, they wet their own whistles, they fed their cronies, and they tossed out a couple of rent crumbs, basically. And again, kept it all in a nonprofit organization. So you didn't know a blessed thing, and you weren't supposed to know, and you were supposed to think that your government cared about you. How sick can this be? But anyway, when the legitimate media wants to say, he's on a trade mission, he's a popular governor. I heard some idiot Republicans say that this week, and I'm like, what poll is he watching? He's watching the poll, but maybe Quinnipiac University did. Yeah, they poll students and professors. They're not going to tell you they love Donald Trump, right? My poll on Twitter, which of course went to multiple thousands of people, 99.2 to 0.7 didn't like him, thought he was awful. Put me in the 99.2. But basically, I mean, they want to separate you from reality so you can do this, and he can continue to run these scams. But anyway, excuse me, if you go down the line, and this is the whole thing, if you're a good racketeer, not an idiot, break and enter criminal, but a good racketeer, you run a number of rackets at the same time. And the only way you can, quote unquote, ascertain and defeat a racket, far beyond the interest level, from what I can see, anybody in the legislature and in the, what do we still have state police? I imagine we do. But, I see them, they're out doing other things. But are there people who are interested in what's going on here in a racketeering level? The only way you see a racket is you've got to look at all the permutations. I learned that watching Racket Squad as a kid. I still watch those shows. I mean, because what the Lamonts are doing is the same stuff done then. There's only one devil. There's only one devil. The only thing that changes is the years. And it's the same tricks. It's just, different tricksters, basically, and that's what it is. But anyway, let's look at again, this permutation, this confluence of events. Remember, actually, maybe you don't have to remember back that far. Right at the time of Semaphore and right at the time of the IPO, somehow $90 million, how much can I blow this up? Probably not nearly as much as I'd like to. Maybe I can't. Hang on just a bit. Now I guess, there you go. Let's just see here. This went down to 58 million, but $90 million ends up in something called the Horse Barn Hill Investment Fund in the Cayman Islands. Now, what the hell is a tax-exempt University of Connecticut foundation? That's who was investing in this. Why do they have to invest 12% of their endowment in the Cayman Islands? I mean, they don't pay tax, right? You would think that the stuff they would put in this foundation, as far as the investments are concerned, are things that, actually, it's not probably a much better screenshot, if you will. You would think that they'd be putting things in things that, would benefit the kids of the university and save money and try to save expenses. No, it just all kind of goes there. And the Horse Barn Hill Investment Fund, as we have shown, the lead investment proponent is BlackRock. BlackRock and Oak HCFT were the lead pusher drivers of Semaphore, and this all happens right at the time on or about the IPO. Nothing happening here. When the unaccountable went to India in February of 2024, he brought along the Yukon lady. Well, it's trade. It's, we're trying to find out what Indian people are doing and to get their skills and maybe get people here on HB1 visas, H1B visas, and get them to work cheap and or the unaccountables over there doing his own business. We'll get to that in just a bit. So basically, it's like, all right, add this, if you will. Just don't want to mess up the slides. To this, to this, to this, and to this. I mean, what do you see? I know what I see. But basically, this all went on, goes on. Nobody says a word other than me, other than several others. But, you don't hear a legislator talking about that. We have dolts and doorknobs on the university committee. Are they raising this question? I mean, I would be. It's like, what the hell is this kind of money going into a functional nonprofit to the university? And don't give me this crud that you don't have jurisdiction over it. That's ridiculous. That is insulting to the intelligence of the dumbest Connecticut resident. It's absolutely, this is a feeder arm. The amount of tuition a kid is paying is predicated upon other sources of money coming in. Okay. So add that to the mix. Now let me just do this. You don't see that part of me, but I do. And I had to move my face. And we had something else in this same mix a little bit later in the timeline, the digital currency group. You remember what happened there? All these politicians came out and they said, this is going to be this wonderful thing, and it's going to be this game changer. Stanford's going to be the crypto city. And they all lined up like lummoxes with little plastic helmets looking like dorky dingleberries, and never told you that Anne Lamont was a functional investor in this and or still could have been the fund manager and never told you that there was any connection. So you think that, like, put it this way, you have obligations to your investors and you have obligations to your clients, so that if you say you're pulling out of something, you're pulling out of an investment, and you're probably not because they want to see that you're still invested in it, because they want your you-know-whats in the same place as their you-know-whats. But let's just say, assuming arguendo, that she did that. I mean, she can't walk away from these other people. She has to serve them. So she serves them. She serves them by saying that we're going to have a big open up in Stamford and we're going to bring in all these jobs and money's going to be flowing. And oh yeah, by the way, my husband's the governor and he's got his hand on the DECD, Department of Economic and Community Development wallet. The should be abolished Department of Economic and Community Development. I'd like to see one politician, one governor candidate say that. Prove to me the value of the Department of Economic and Community Development. Prove to me what it's done. Look at the multiple millions that have been spent. Look at the economic record and the wreckage, and tell me why you feel you need this. Believe me, I'd like to know. Thousands of people are now watching this show. I will take your statement and put you on. Basically, I don't like to do interviews here, at least not yet. But that's an interview I would definitely put on. I really would. But anyway, let's move down the line a little bit. So add that to that, to that, to that, to that, to that, to that, and the governor's on an economic mission to India. How dare we question him? Okay, let's move down the line a little bit. We went through a couple weeks ago the on the lam trip to India, and we talked about the fact that the lying state Hearst media said that Advanced CT paid for the economic trip, and this was good, and Ned paid for himself. Last week, I showed you that on this is right out of the checkbook. I mean, they're so blatant about what they do. They leave a lot out that you can see. When they were all over there in India, February 26, 2025, $500,000 of your taxpayer money went on this happy little jaunt, which is in Advanced CT, which is a Connecticut nonprofit, which is exempt from public disclosure. And not only that, there's another Advanced CT pot, and actually $500,000 there. And I believe, let's just see, February 26, 2025. Remember, you didn't pay for this. And $250. So a total of $1.25 million of your taxpayer money went to facilitate Ned and the peccadillos of the Yukon Foundation, Rudenka, I Cry, the Poor Mouth Merrick, Yale Ventures. They had a guy on from there. That, of course, is Josh Cabal. And Advanced CT, and on and on we go. What did they do? What are they doing? What are the concrete results of this? What is supposed to be happening here? They don't want to tell you. They don't want to tell you. I mean, and basically, they're robbing your money to do it. If you go back to Mr. Rennie, and actually over here, the governor's on a trade mission to India. Yeah, he's trading all right. He's trading all right. Look at that. I mean, actually not over there, but look at this. Look, he's trading. Oh yeah, he's trading. He's trading your grandchild's inheritance for his own benefit. And this is the whole thing. You're a Republican. You want to run for governor. You want to quote unquote be the person to change. These are the questions you're going to be answering. And what you will not be able to do, I warn you now, what you will not be able to do is dodge like everybody else has and pretend this doesn't happen and pretend none of this goes on and pretend this funny business. It's like, well, okay, that may not be a big thing. I think that's a very feeble argument, but compared to that, add it 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 to that, and add it to that, and every one of these things stands on its own merit, basically. But This is only what I'm showing you is the tip of the iceberg. For one man to be in all these little pots, for one man to be in this much soup and this much question and this much running and gunning and not answering questions and giving interviews only to people who will not ask him these questions, and to have this whole thing, quote unquote, on, as my father would say in the movies, the cutting room floor, is absolutely beyond belief. But hey, it doesn't stop there. What about voting? Remember, we looked at this in on the Lee Elsey show, 4CT. This was another one of those COVID chair. I mean, how many something CTs do we need? Believe me, maybe someday I'll count it. I mean, basically, these are all like, happy little pots where you can do happy little things and keep them all from, unhappy public view. But 4CT was wheeled out right out of the Hartford Foundation of Public Giving at the time of COVID. And this was a way that we were going to help the afflicted people in Connecticut and help them deal with the coronavirus. Now, we had looked at this right before the Lamont-Stefanowski election, and I dug around in it, and they and they're not shy about this at all. They're handing cash cards to quote unquote poor people to use for whatever purpose. I'm sure they'll qualify for purchases in the state marijuana store. But that all kind of being as it is, I said, well, all right, that's what you're doing. And basically, a lot of people gave these large donations that basically were donations of closely held stock, which closely held stock, nobody really knows what it is. You could throw a value on it and hope you don't get caught and get a charitable deduction. But basically, it's, I said, well, something's very weird here, because when you look at here's the people that work in a lot of people work in these nonprofits, and it amazes me. I mean, it is a mind-boggling sea of faces. But here's somebody here. She's on the board of Advanced CT. Emily Huntress Lamont. She is the daughter of the king and Anne Lamont. She is the developer. I'm actually going to blow that up if I can. Use my limited computer skills. I'm doing better. She developed and operated the 4CT card program, providing direct financial assistance to Connecticut families. And then you can look at her other, quote unquote, shall we say, inline endeavors. Now, here I am. I'm thinking, well, here's the daughter of Ned and Annie. She's got her hands on these people coming in for cards. Now, I think, like the people of undue medical debt, these people take these things, or debt relief or cards or whatever, but they take them with, more or less of an implied obligation, or at least an invitation that when voting time comes around, do you want more cards? Do you want more debt relief? Do you want, well, remember to vote for Ned Lamont, because he was the person that did this thing. And here is the daughter of the, shall I say, the king and queen of Connecticut, who has direct access to potential voters. And I'm sure, no funny business one. I'm sure of it. I'm sure this was all done with the highest of intention. What do you think they're going to do with the data? Do you think they're going to leave it on a little floppy disk in the administrative assistant's desk? Is that what you think they're going to? Is that what you? Maybe you think that. I would. If how can I put it? If Lara Trump had access to the voting records of, shall I say, Brooklyn, New York, and Donald Trump was involved in some undue medical debt forgiveness type quasi, my own belief, I think it's a violation of the Internal Revenue Code, and I've shown that. But, debt relief scam, every Democrat would be up there saying, Donald Trump is illegally turning the vote and unduly influencing the vote in New York City. Well, hey, listen, what do you think this is? What do you think this is? Why do you think they do what they do, considering they do not care about you in the least? I mean, yeah. So In recap, start from the Mr. Rennies of the world saying that he's on an economic development trip to India, the COVID baby, the suspicious transfer starting the Cayman Island Fund, semaphore state tax dollars going to a connected equity. Unite Us, an equity corporation being out of the Connecticut Hospital Association, being funded by state tax dollars that come in through a nonprofit exempt from freedom of information, so they can pump their software and run their package. Nice work if you can get it. Then the Horse Barn Hill Investment Fund, somehow, miraculously, mysteriously, a tax-exempt private foundation invests, having to do with Connecticut legislation, invests 12% of its endowment in a Cayman Island-based fund with common partners to the Lamont family, this one over here. And believe me, I could take you down the whole thing of investments that jeopardize a charitable purpose. That I'd have you here till 8 o'clock at night, and you'd be very angry with me. But then Digital Currency Group, hey, nothing happening here, nothing going on. We just put this here because it was a good company. We didn't tell you that the Lamont family was involved. We didn't tell you. Immaterial, irrelevant, and the recent economic trip to India is funded by you, when they told you that it wasn't, and they're not telling you what went on in that trip. And oh, by the way, we got the voting side covered as well. Now, remember, go back to here. Don't look at the other stuff, concentrate on Diamandis. I'm concentrating on Diamandis, but this other stuff is much greater, much bigger than that. And the establishment and the political parties and the media stay away from it. And you ask yourself, I'll stop the share here. You ask yourself, why? The whys can boggle your mind at all hours of the day or night. Are they connected? Are they, are they partaking? Are there cash amounts being passed under the table? Is this some sort of a, shall I say, a cash grab where they're all really nervous now because the water's going to be cut off? I pray to my Lord Jesus Christ in his name that we'll get to that very shortly. But basically, how could you not look at, or how could you look at what I've just shown you, which is only the tippy tip of the iceberg, because what I've given you is sort of a Whitman sampler of what's been going on and what we've been doing on this show and the Lee Elsey show for 5 years. How could you look at this and say Governor Ned Lamont is not crooked as a corkscrew and corrupt? And if you're running against that, how could you just leave that chapter out of the book? Explain it to me. I'm an idiot. I'm a child of a 7th grade educated father. I grew up in the Bull's Head part of Stamford, Connecticut. I'm, Rippleholm High School remedial math graduate. Explain it to me. I'm a moron. Tell me. And let me tell you, if you explain it to me, I'll listen. If you ignore it, you're just as guilty, because you don't want to explain it because it's as obvious as I'm showing you. It's amazing. It's amazingly insane. But I hope today or this afternoon we showed you really what's going on here. And I can only keep working and keep praying as you all that this mess will end very soon, because it's just wrong. And we just can't continue to have wrong in our lives, in our state, and in our daily business, if you will. We've accepted it for too long, and we paid the price. And if we don't do something now, I shudder to think what will happen. Anyway, it's Tony D'Angelo, and this is 30 with Tony. I'll be back with the rest of the show right after this.
Hello fun seekers. Since we like to mix fun with business, please enjoy another video classic clip, courtesy of the producers of 30 with Tony.
Death, eternal punishment for anyone who opens this casket.
The mummy. Is it dead or alive? Human or inhuman? You'll know. You'll see. You'll feel the awful, creeping, crawling terror that stands your hair on end and brings a scream to your lips. There's nothing on earth like the mummy.
You will not remember what I show you now, and yet I shall awaken memories of love and crime and death.
Now I know his horrible plan. He is going to kill her and make her a living mummy like himself.
Hey 30 with Tony Kimosabis. Welcome to the Dancing Troll.
Sweet loving, baby, ooh, baby, baby, I need your sweet, sweet loving, baby, ooh, baby. Whenever I'm feeling down and my mind is under the weather, whenever I'm on the ground, I need someone to get me together. And I dig everything about you, and I want to say that I can't live without you. Hey baby, you know I'm gonna stay. Baby, I need your sweet loving, baby. Ooh, baby, baby, I need your sweet, sweet loving, baby. I've hurt your feeling, I've lied, and I've even been untrue. Now that my conscience needs some healing, I've found out I'm hung on you. And I dig everything about you, and I want to say that I can't live without you. Hey baby, you know I'm gonna stay. You know, you walk so nice and you talk so nice, and you're just too much for me. And that's why I've got to tell you that I dig the thing about you. Oh, baby, ooh, baby, the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you move, oh, it's really a groove. You know, I just can't get tired just looking at you, baby. Come on now.
DJT here. Think my rallies are good? Watch 30 with Tony Thursdays at 3 on Twitter for real fun.
Well, thanks, Kemosabe's. Thanks for staying with us. I hope you enjoyed the show. Anyway, I heard a story a while back. A little boy wanted to buy his mother a present, so he went into the pet shop. He wanted to get something really special, and the man showed him a parrot that spoke 15 languages. And it was absolutely unbelievable. I thought, boy, my mother would really, really, really appreciate that. She's always talking about being lonely when we're all out at school and work, so the parrot will keep her company. So he brings the parrot home, and he puts the parrot in the cage, and he goes out to play. And he comes back, and he sees there is no parrot, there's a bunch of feathers, and there is a soup on the stove. And the kid goes to the mother and he says, Mom, what did you do that for? That was your present. That was what I was going to give you. It was an amazing parrot. He did languages. He did 97 languages. How dare you do this? And mother, very practical woman, just shook her head and said, you know, son, I speak 2 languages. I speak English and I speak Italian. And you would think if that bird really could speak either one of those languages, he would be here today. I don't know. Are we going up or downhill? It's Tony D'Angelo here on 30 with Tony. Thanks, Kemosabe's. Thanks for staying with us. And next week we'll be back with an even greater show. So long.